Hello, it's John Heaton, and I'm going to review the Rolling Stones' Black and Blue. I wasn't going to do this review right now, but I'm doing it for a very good reason, which I'll come to a bit later in the video. So I'm showing you the cover. This album released in April of 1976, and I think it's one of the Rolling Stones' best covers, certainly an improvement over It's Only Rock and Roll, Goat's Head Soup. So probably the best cover since Sticky Fingers, and one of their all-time great covers just because it's got a great picture of the band circa 1975-76. So Ron Wood was not quite an official member of the Stones, but he was official enough to be on the cover. Charlie, of course, Mick and Keith here, and then Bill at the back. I'm not sure where it was taken, this picture. Looks like on the ocean somewhere. And this is the gatefold, which is kind of an interesting concept. A little bit reminiscent of the Venus and Mars gatefold. And I think it's another which I'm reminded of, which I can't think of at the moment. This is a Dutch pressing. So this is the sheet which shows who plays what on which track, which is very useful information that hadn't been available on previous Stones albums. Also tells you when the tracks were laid down. And this is on the black Rolling Stones label with a custom-made black and blue label there. And then we have the lyric sheet, which hadn't been included in the last few albums. In fact, thinking about it, it may have been one of the first albums, if not the first, to include the lyrics. I think Some Girls came with the lyrics on early editions. Later on, in general, I think it's fair to say that the Stones didn't include their lyrics, but here they did. And so these sessions, Keith has described this album as the album where they were trying out new guitarists, because Mick Taylor had left the previous year to join the Jack Bruce band, and Mick was a little annoyed by that, by him leaving, so they were left in the lurch a bit. So they auditioned quite a few guitarists, such as who play on this album. Harvey Mandel is one, and Wayne Perkins is another, as well as Ronnie. Although Ronnie Wood's contribution to this album is interestingly more backing vocals than guitar, although he is featured heavily on the Hey Negrita track on guitar. And actually, out of interest, he was on the title track of the previous album, It's Only Rock and Roll. So, this album came out April 76. The sessions for the album mostly in the early part of 75. I think the latest session here is 30th of March 75, or 2nd of April 75, sorry, the Hey Negrita track. So when the album came out, the tracks had been recorded over a year previously, so took their time adding finishing touches and stuff to the production in the latter half and the beginning of 76. But I have to say, when this album when it hit the shops, I didn't buy it at the time, but I can imagine that the reaction from the fans, because it seems to me like a breath of fresh air after the previous album in terms of production. Hot Stuff is just what it says. It's a hot disco track, and it's paving the way for the Stones to do an even better disco song on the following album, Some Girls, with Miss You. But this track is, and I think someone commented that there's more grooves and jamming than songs on this album, and actually that's one of its strengths, and I would agree. This track is certainly indicative of that statement. It's got pretty nonsense lyrics, but a really good riff and really good musicianship. I forget who guests on this track, along with the band. Who have we got? Harvey Mandel, Billy Preston on piano, and the band members. So they got a good feel. I don't think Ronnie Wood is on this track. I'm just trying to find him. He's not even on. Yeah, he is on. He's on backup vocals along with Billy, Keith, Mick, Ronnie, backup vocals. So that's interesting. So I think this track is a really strong opener, and probably my favourite track on the album, actually. And then it continues with a superb kind of laid-back rocker, Hand of Fate, again taking it a chugging tempo similar to Tumbling Dice, and which makes it a favourite of mine. I think the chord changes are great, and Mick sings it well, and it's really well delivered. Just before I forget to mention, a couple of tracks were recorded from these sessions, later turned up onto 2U. The track Slave and the track Worried About You apparently debuted from these sessions. Can't think for the life of me why Slave was left off this album. I think it's superior to quite a few tracks on here. Worried About You, maybe they preferred the Falta Cry ballad. They didn't want two falsetto ballads on the same album, but anyway, I thought that was worth mentioning. Then we get Cherry O Baby, which is a fully fledged foray into disco, and I didn't write this track, but they have good fun covering it, and they recorded this at the back end of '74, actually. Anything in particular? Nicky Hopkins is on organ. And then the album finishes with side one finishes with Memory Motel, which is a unique song because it features lead vocals from both Mick and Keith. And Mick starts it off beautifully with his ballad voice, and then Keith pretty much steals the show when he comes in for his bit. She's got a mind of her own, and she uses it well. She's one of a kind. It's just beautifully sung, and maybe the chorus is not the highlight of the song, and it goes on maybe a couple of minutes too long, because it's set more than 7 minutes long. But some nice piano playing, actually from Mick Jagger, concert piano Mick. So that's interesting. We've got Wayne and Harvey on guitar, Billy Preston again featuring. So that's a strong closer to side one, and then Hey Negrita, inspiration Ron Wood, is a funky opener to side two. Maybe not the best choice to open a side. Maybe they should have opened it with the track Slave, actually. Probably a better song, but it's quite a good track here. It's full of interesting ideas musically, and it's got a lot of energy. It's not a brilliant song. Melody, inspiration Billy Preston, who's all over the vocals, and the piano, of course. So he's singing, he's credited with harmony vocal, but in many ways he's singing lead along with Mick. Arranged by Arif Mardin, which is interesting, who would produce Ringo's Rotogravure the same year, 76. Then we got Falta Cry, which is just a glorious ballad. The Stones are so good at coming out with great ballads, and this one's unique at the time, because Mick's singing his falsetto voice, which he was to use quite a bit going forward, like on Emotional Rescue and Worried About You, which came from these sessions actually. But Falta Cry, lovely mixture of the normal Mick voice with the falsetto chorus. And I remember seeing a footage of the Stones playing this in concert somewhere on some TV show in Germany, and Keith was literally asleep while playing this track. So not the best period for Keith, still right in the middle or towards the end, but still in the midst of his heroin phase. By the way, another thing I should mention is there was a pretty disgraceful advertising campaign for this album, which featured a woman tied up and with the caption, "I'm black and blue from the Rolling Stones and I love it." I don't know, and it got a lot of press coverage, probably helped sell a few extra copies, but to me, in my mind, that's a pretty poor taste advertising campaign. They would have done better just putting a giant poster of this gatefold picture up around the place. I think it would have sold more copies. But anyway, Falta Cry is a great number. Crazy Mama is it's an okay closer to the album. It's kind of run-of-the-mill Stones. It's decent but not brilliant. I think Hand of Fate works better. It's in the same style as Hand of Fate, but Crazy Mama is a little bit long, 4.5 minutes. Not bad, but it's not the strongest closer to the album. So, on the whole, good album, and I think a significant improvement on It's Only Rock and Roll, and paving the way for greater things on the next album, Some Girls, which is one of my favourites. So this is what I wanted to show you. I've just been up in Aberdeen, on the east coast of Scotland, and whilst I was there, I took the opportunity to check the vinyl record shops, and started off very disappointingly. The first one I visited was pathetic in its selection. And the second one was closed, and they said, we're in the middle of moving premises, but the door was still open. So I said, sorry, and they said, you weren't to know. So I thought, this isn't going to be a very good day. Lucky to say, the third and fourth shops I visited were excellent. There's a shop called Made in Vinyl Records, and a shop called Skip, I think it was. And Made in Vinyl Records had this copy of Black and Blue, which I picked up because it's on blue vinyl. Look at that. Beautiful blue vinyl. Dutch only pressing. I wasn't even aware that this album came out on blue vinyl, so I was very excited to find it. It wasn't cheap, but I treated myself because, as I say, I wasn't even aware. I do love coloured vinyl, and if I see something as rare as this, which I've not seen before, I'm a bit of a sucker for that kind of thing, and I splashed out and treated myself to this blue vinyl copy of Black and Blue, which I think is among the Stones' best covers, and in terms of grooves, one of their better 70s albums. So pretty strong overall. At least half of it, I would say, is top-notch Stones. So thank you for watching. See you next time.